Welcome to the Cozy Storytime, your peaceful space to unwind and relax. Before we start, make sure to subscribe and like the video for more cozy stories every night. So, where are you watching it from? And what are you doing right now? I hope you enjoyed this story. In the quiet depths of Middle-earth, where the stars whisper secrets to the wind and the earth remembers the footsteps of those long past, a story unfolds. A tale of shadows and light, of sorrow and healing, of a journey unseen by most but felt by the world itself. Tonight, let your mind drift beyond the familiar, beyond the hills and valleys of the waking world, into a place where time moves gently and the echoes of forgotten voices find their peace. Close your eyes. Breathe deep. Let the warmth of the fire and the hush of the evening guide you. For this is the story of Gandalf's battle in the Shadow Realm, a journey through darkness, not to fight, but to heal. And so, the tale begins. The wind carried with it a strange scent, one not of spring nor of autumn, but something older, more forgotten. Gandalf stood upon a ridge overlooking the wild lands beyond the misty mountains. His white robe shimmered softly under the pale moonlight, and his staff, rooted gently into the earth beside him, hummed faintly with a quiet warning. The stars above blinked like watchful eyes, yet even they seemed troubled tonight. He had ridden far from the borders of Gondor, leaving behind counsel and kings, trusting that the world did not yet need his hand for guidance, yet. But there was a stirring in the east, a ripple in the great fabric of Arda that no one else seemed to feel, save him. Birds in the east flew in crooked patterns, their songs no longer light and clear. The trees there whispered in languages even the ants no longer remembered. It had begun with a dream, not his own, but passed him through the dreaming of Galadriel. She had sent word through her swan ships, and in the golden woods of Lothlorien, Gandalf had seen it. A realm of mist and shadow where voices were caught in echoes, where light bent away as though afraid. Galadriel had not named it, but she had called it a place that lies between waking and memory. He called it something else, Shadow Realm. Rivendell was where he sought wisdom next. As he passed under the great archways of Imladris, the waterfall song of the valley sang low and solemn. Elrond met him with quiet eyes, aged even beyond their immortal grace. "You feel it too," Elrond had said, not as a question, but as an acknowledgement. "There is a crack forming," Gandalf replied, "not in stone or sky, but in the borders of what is real and what lies forgotten. A seam, and something ancient pressing from the other side." Elrond led him through old scrolls and faded tomes, maps of the unseen, records of dreams once dismissed. "Before the First Age," he said, his fingers trailing lines on a map of starlight and parchment, "there were whispers of realms that mirrored Arda, not of this world, but shaped by its memory. Realms that the Vala sealed or turned their eyes from. Some were prisons. Others were places of waiting. The Shadow Realm, it may be one of those." It had no fixed name in any tongue Gandalf spoke, yet every culture had dreamed of it. Dwarves called it Uzdana, the Grey Forge. Elves whispered of Raneth and Duath, the Wonderland of Shade. Hobbits, though unknowingly, sang lullabies that warned of getting lost between dreams. A choice stood before him. Gandalf could remain in the waking world, guide the young age now blooming in peace. Or he could walk a path unknown, to seek the source of the disturbance before it could bleed into their realm. But Gandalf had never been one to ignore such calls. Not when something ancient stirred. Not when hope depended on knowledge no one else sought. So he journeyed. He traveled first to the edges of Fanghorn Forest, where the trees still remembered the firstborn, where bark bore the memory of light before the sun. It was there that the veil thinned. He felt it in the stillness, where the wind dared not move and even the birds stopped to listen. He sat among the roots of an elder tree, its trunk so wide 3 men could not encircle it, and began to whisper words in a tongue that was not spoken aloud for ages. The ground around him shimmered faintly, not with fire or magic in the way men knew it, but with something subtler, permission. The leaves rustled with memory. One by one, the whispers of trees answered him, not with understanding but with acknowledgement. "I seek the gate," Gandalf murmured. "The old path. The seam between the waking world and what lies beyond." The roots shifted. The moss parted. And from the hollow between 2 stones, a faint glow rose, a line of silver light, like moonlight bent into a crack. Gandalf leaned forward. The veil was thin here. Not torn, not open, but willing. He drew his staff close, not to strike or command, but to guide. With his other hand, he traced the outline of the glow, and it responded, stretching, widening slightly, just enough for a man to pass through, if he dared. Behind him, the forest breathed. The old magic still remembered him. It trusted him. He stepped forward. At first, it was nothing. No sound, no wind, no scent. Like the moment before waking, when the world has not yet formed. Then, light shifted. Not darkness, but the absence of familiarity. Shapes without form. Paths that curved inward. Trees that stood not from the earth, but from memory. The world here was layered like dreams overlapping. He had arrived. The shadow realm was not evil, not yet. But it was wrong, and something deep within it had begun to pulse. He could feel it watching him. Something old. Something forgotten by the Vala. Something that wanted in. Gandalf did not tremble. Instead, he stood quietly, breathing in this new world with the calm of one who had stood before Balrogs and battled death itself. His journey had begun, and the light behind him faded until even the memory of Middle-earth was muffled by the thick, silver-gray air of the Shadow Realm. Yet even here, his staff glowed. Soft, steady. A reminder. Hope does not always shine. Sometimes it whispers. The world he stepped into had no color, yet it wasn't quite black and white. It was as though someone had drained the world of its hue, leaving behind only memory and outline, pale silvers, soft grays, and shades that trembled between shadow and form. The air was thick but not suffocating, cool but not cold. Still, it was not welcoming. There was no wind, but his robes moved as if brushed by invisible threads. His staff clicked gently against the ground with each step, though the sound was muffled, as if the realm did not wish to acknowledge noise at all. Gandalf walked slowly, thoughtfully, eyes open not just in sight, but in sense. His Maya spirit reached outward. Here, in this strange plane of shadow, he could feel the echo of every footstep long before it fell. The world responded not in motion, but in intention. Every thought, every shift in heart, rippled gently across the surface of this place, like stones skipping across still water. He came to a hill, not tall, but steep, its summit obscured in a thin veil of silver mist. There was something atop it. He could not yet see what, only that it called to him, not in words, but in presence. A suggestion, like a memory half remembered. He approached. Each step uphill grew heavier, not from exertion, but as if the hill itself resisted him. Gravity worked differently here, not as a force, but as will. The land did not want to be known. It shied away from intruders, even ones as gentle and wise as Gandalf. Still, he climbed. At the top, he found the remnants of something ancient, a structure, circular, broken and half sunken into the mist. It may once have been a tower, or perhaps a gate. Now it was only stone and silence. Vines, gray and brittle, clung to it like cobwebs. At the center was a low platform. No markings, no carvings. Just a single impression on the stone surface, a faint spiral, one as though many hands had touched it long ago. Gandalf knelt beside it, his hand hovering. There was no warmth, no magic spark that sang to him. But when he finally let his fingers touch the spiral, something shifted. Not the world around him, but the world behind him. He turned. The landscape, which had once stretched out in formless gray, had subtly rearranged itself. Hills now curved differently. A tree, tall and bare as bone, that he was certain hadn't been there before, now stood just beyond the path. The entire place had shifted its memory of itself. He stood, tightening his grip on his staff. "This realm watches," he murmured to no one but the space around him. "It adjusts." As if in answer, a flicker moved in the corner of his vision, too fast to follow, too faint to grasp. A figure? A shade? Perhaps even just a thought projected into form. It didn't matter. He wasn't alone anymore. And then, a voice, not spoken, but heard deep in the bone, stirred the silence. "You are not of this place." It came not from a mouth, nor from a shape. It existed within the very mist, a resonance that wrapped around the mind like fog. "I am not," Gandalf said calmly. "But I am allowed." Silence answered. Long, heavy, and pressing. Then again came the voice, "Permission is not belonging." "No," he agreed, "but I do not seek to belong. Only to understand." This time, the air seemed to part. Mist peeled away like drawn curtains, and in its wake stood a figure. Not tall, not monstrous. No wings, no armor, no flame. Simply a man-shaped form, shadow given outline. It flickered, like smoke barely held in place. The Watcher. Gandalf had read of them once. Spirits or remnants who served as guides, or sentries, in realms between. Not good. Not evil. Just there. Witnesses of forgotten truths. The Watcher did not approach, nor did it speak again with words. Instead, it opened its hands. In one palm lay a shard of obsidian, smooth, polished, unnaturally dark. In the other, a feather of silver light, weightless even in this place. It offered neither. "Choices," Gandalf said. The figure nodded, a slow and steady motion. "Two paths?" he asked. Still no voice. But the realm itself responded. The land to his left grew darker, the mist steepening into a more liquid shadow, thicker, slower. The land to the right brightened faintly. The light here meant only a paler gray, with air less heavy and the terrain more familiar. Gandalf stared at both. One leads to knowledge, he murmured. The other to confrontation. He looked at the Watcher. And the heart of this disturbance lies, which way? The figure tilted its head, and for the briefest moment, Gandalf saw within its form a flurry of images, stars falling like tears, a gate of bone, a crown broken in three, and a flame, dim and cold. Then nothing. The Watcher turned and began to walk toward the darker path. Not quickly. Not forcefully. It simply expected to be followed. Gandalf hesitated only a moment, then stepped after it. The land changed quickly once they passed the invisible threshold between the two paths. The mist thickened again, but now they curled and twisted, moving with direction. The silence became layered, no longer empty, but filled with faraway echoes, voices that spoke in reverse whispers, footsteps that seemed to circle without source. Here, the Shadow Realm did not just resist presence. It remembered it. They walked for what felt like hours, or no time at all. Time here was meaningless, measured only by thought, not by sun or stars. Occasionally, Gandalf would see ruins, archways sunken into the ground, statues worn blank, roads that led nowhere and yet felt trodden by thousands before. This place is older than even this song, he whispered, not to the Watcher, but to himself. Not a creation of the Vala, but a consequence of forgetting. The Watcher finally stopped. Before them stood a tree, massive, gnarled, lifeless. Its roots curled above the ground like claws, and at its center was a hollow, perfectly round, like the mouth of a cave. Without looking, the Watcher stepped aside. Gandalf approached the hollow. Inside, a tunnel curved downward into the earth, or what passed for earth here. Faint whispers spilled from its depth, not in language, but in sensation. Regret. Loss. Longing. He looked back at the Watcher. You do not follow? The shadowy form stood still, unmoving. Gandalf gave a slow nod of respect. Then I go on alone. And with a deep breath, he entered the hollow. At once, the mists behind him sealed. Not cruelly, but firmly. The Watcher was gone. The way back was gone. Before him, the path into the deeper Shadow Realm lay waiting, one shaped not by nature or stone, but by memory, fear, and forgotten truths. Whatever lay at the heart of this realm, it would not be found in light. Only by walking through shadow could it be seen. And so, Gandalf walked. The tunnel wound downward, neither steep nor shallow, but with a gentle curve that seemed to go on forever. The deeper Gandalf walked, the more distant the world above became, not in space, but in memory. He tried to recall the sound of birds, the rush of rivers, the scent of pine after rain, but they were like dreams fading with waking, impossible to hold on to for long. The walls of the tunnel were not of stone, but of something older, something like petrified shadow. When Gandalf reached out and touched them, they felt cold and smooth, yet somehow pulsed faintly with presence, like the skin of a sleeping creature. He did not touch them again. He walked in silence for what felt like days, though he knew there was no sun to measure them by, no moon to trace. Here, time bent inward. It circled, paused, and sometimes wandered away completely. Gandalf's mind, trained by centuries and sharpened by ageless wisdom, held its clarity, but even he felt the subtle pull of forgetfulness. He paused only once, when he came upon a doorway, not a real door, not made of wood or iron, but shaped from the tunnel wall itself. It was arched, elegant, and shimmered faintly like heat over summer stone. Symbols drifted across its surface, shifting and reforming. Words in no tongue he had ever heard, but which somehow he understood. Here lie the dreams of the forsaken. He did not open it. Instead, he moved on, deeper into the realm. Eventually, the tunnel widened, and Gandalf stepped into a clearing, a place both open and enclosed. The sky above was a dome of mist and motionless light, pale and directionless. Beneath his feet, the ground had become smoother, almost polished. Reflections danced upon it, not of him, but of others, images and faces moving across the floor like passing clouds. Some were elves in silver armor. Others, kings whose crowns had crumbled. A child with dark curls and curious eyes, a hobbit, glanced up at him from the ground, then faded as if never there. This was a place of echoes. He heard them before he saw them. Voices. Dozens. Hundreds. But all faint, overlapping, as though drawn from the ends of memory. None of them were complete, just fragments of speech that curled around the edge of understanding. We should have waited. No more light here. He promised a door, but there was only shadow. They forgot us. The voices faded in and out. Some were frightened. Some angry. A few sounded relieved. And one voice, deep and clear, spoke his name. Olorin. Gandalf turned, eyes narrowing. That name was not one known to many in Middle-earth. It was the name he bore in Valinor, in the west, before he walked among men and elves. "Who calls me so?" he asked aloud, his voice calm, carried not by wind but by thought. A figure stepped forth from the shifting mists, not cloaked in darkness, but in a silvery glow that blurred its edges. It had no face, only the impression of one, like a memory struggling to stay whole. It did not walk, it approached, like a thought made movement. "I remember you," it said, its voice echoing like water in a deep well. "Long ago, when the stars were still new, you stood beside the light." Gandalf regarded it carefully. "And you?" he asked. "Who are you?" The figure tilted its head, as though considering. "I was once hope, or the shadow of it. I do not know my name anymore." "You were Maya?" "No, but I watched them. I remember Varda's song, though I cannot sing it." Gandalf's brows furrowed. "Why are you here?" The figure didn't answer directly. Instead, it turned and gestured toward the heart of the clearing. There, rising from the mist, stood a tree. Unlike the gnarled sentinel at the surface, this one was whole. Its trunk was silver as moonlight, and its branches rose in perfect symmetry. But it bore no leaves, no flowers, no fruit, just stillness. And hanging from its limbs were mirrors. Hundreds of them. Each mirror reflected something different, scenes from long ago, visions of Middle-earth's past, a young Aragorn kneeling at Elrond's side, a company of dwarves laughing beside a fire, Frodo and Sam atop Mount Doom, clutching each other as the world shook around them. Some mirrors reflected things that had not happened, or had not yet happened, possibilities, or perhaps dreams that never came to be. "This," the figure said, "is the tree of memory. It grows in places where the veil between what is and what was is thin. It watches. It remembers. Gandalf approached it slowly. As he did, the mirrors began to tremble, not with fear, but with recognition. One by one, they turned toward him. In each, a different version of himself stared back. Gray, white, old, young, cloaked, bareheaded. In one, he wielded fire. In another, he wept beside a small grave in the Shire. In another still, he was alone, surrounded by ash. He closed his eyes, breathed deeply. "This place tests the heart," he whispered. The figure beside him nodded. "Only those who remember who they are may leave it unchanged." "I do not seek to leave unchanged," Gandalf said. "Only to understand." "Then look." The figure raised an arm and pointed. A mirror larger than the rest drifted downward, hovering before Gandalf. It shimmered, then cleared. He saw himself again, but not as he was. This version stood upon a field of gray stone, facing a darkness that rose like a tide. Behind him, the lands of Middle-earth, familiar and beloved, lay still, as if frozen in time. In the vision, he held no staff, no sword, only a light in his hand, small but defiant. The shadow in front of him moved. A voice, distant yet clear, spoke from the mirror. "The wall is thinning. The door is opening." The image faded. Gandalf turned to the figure. "Is that what lies ahead?" "Perhaps," it said. "Or perhaps it is only what might be, if the breach is not sealed." "Something is trying to come through," Gandalf said. "From here into the waking world." The figure did not answer. Instead, the ground trembled gently. A soft sound, like the beat of a vast and sleeping heart, echoed beneath their feet. And from the base of the tree, a low fog began to rise. Within it, forms took shape, blurry, indistinct, moving like lost children in a dream. They wandered without purpose, whispering names, holding objects long since decayed. One reached toward Gandalf, a woman, her hand outstretched, eyes blank. "Help us," she said. But her voice was not one of pleading. It was as if she had forgotten what help meant and only remembered the shape of the word. The figure turned to Gandalf one final time. "The further you go, the more memory is lost. Even your own. Hold fast to what is true. Hold fast to who you are." Then it faded, drifting backward into the mist like a leaf on still water. Gandalf bowed his head slightly in farewell, then turned toward the only path that remained, a long stone stair that led downward once more, toward a soft pulsing light in the distance. The deeper parts of the Shadow Realm awaited, and the battle had not yet begun. The stairway spiraled like a serpent into the unseen deep, carved from the same petrified shadow that lined the upper realm. Gandalf's steps were slow, deliberate. Each footfall echoed oddly, sometimes twice, sometimes not at all, as if time faltered with each motion. He kept one hand upon the stone wall, grounding himself in the present, though the world around him pulsed with memories and fading echoes. As he descended, the air grew heavier, not with heat or cold, but with remembrance, memories that were not his, yet brushed against his mind like passing spirits. He heard a father singing a lullaby to a child that would never wake. He saw the glint of a blade dropped in retreat, the final breath of a dying king. He felt the ache of promises broken across lifetimes. These were not illusions. The Shadow Realm was no trickster's dream, it was a place where forgotten truths clung to the edges of time. And here, Gandalf walked not merely as a traveler, but as a bearer of light. The staff he held did not shine, yet it pushed back the gloom with a quiet insistence, like a memory that refuses to be buried. After what could have been minutes or weeks, he reached the foot of the stair. Before him stood a hall vast and silent, roofed by arching stone limbs that met high above in a dome of translucent mist. The air here shimmered slightly, as if the very space were exhausted from holding so many stories. At the center of the hall, a door stood. It was tall, easily twice Gandalf's height, and made not of wood or stone, but of something smoother, darker, and alive with faint movement. Its surface was veined like black marble, but the veins pulsed softly, like the beat of a slumbering heart. No handle, no lock. Only a single symbol adorned it, a circle within a circle, each turning slowly in opposite directions. Gandalf stood still before it, watching the motion. He recognized the symbol, though he had seen it only once before, deep in the lost archives of Valinor, a mark whispered to represent unmaking. This was no ordinary threshold. He reached out, not to touch, but to sense. The door hummed at his presence, its vibration rising gently in pitch, like a voice remembering a name. It did not resist him, but it did not welcome him either. It acknowledged him, and in doing so, asked a question. Do you choose to enter? Not aloud, not in voice, but in the quiet language of the soul. Gandalf lowered his hand. I do, he said softly. And the door opened. It did not swing nor slide. It simply ceased to be, fading into vapor like a shadow dismissed by sunrise. Beyond lay a path of onyx, suspended over nothing. A void stretched endlessly beneath and above, a deep and starless expanse where even thought had difficulty taking root. And on that path, waiting like a sentinel, was a figure. Unlike the watcher he had met before, this one was not shrouded or blurred. It was clear, tall, regal. A man, perhaps, or what had once been a man. Cloaked in robes of midnight, his face pale as frost, his eyes dark voids that shimmered faintly with inner stars. He bore no weapon. He had no crown. But the air bent around him, subtly, as if space remembered his presence long before he arrived. He raised his head and looked directly at Gandalf. Alarin, he said. His voice was quiet and calm, but it echoed with a weight that pressed against the walls of reality. At last. You know me, Gandalf said. I remember you, the figure replied. Long ago, when you walked in the light, you passed by me. You did not see me. Few did. Gandalf stepped forward cautiously. What are you? The figure smiled, but it was not a cruel smile. It was weary. A guardian. A prisoner. A remnant of a choice that was never made. I have come seeking the source of the breach, Gandalf said. Something from this place is leaking into the waking world. It distorts memory, weakens the walls of thought. It feeds on sorrow. Yes, said the figure. Because I sent it. Gandalf's hand tightened around his staff. Then you are the darkness I seek. The figure raised one pale hand, not in threat, but in plea. Do not mistake me, wizard. I am not your enemy. I did not seek to harm the world. I only wish to be seen again. He stepped to the side, gesturing to the path behind him. Tum, you must understand before you judge. and Gandalf walked with him. The bridge of onyx wound across the void, but as they walked, it transformed, slowly shifting from pure shadow to something like glass, revealing visions beneath their feet. Gandalf looked down and saw scenes unfolding, as though through the lens of time itself. He saw a man in ancient robes standing at the edge of a great library, his face bright with wonder. He saw the same man later, kneeling before a council of unseen powers, begging for entry into the world of light. He saw rejection, quiet and final. "I was a scholar," the figure said beside him. "Not Maya, not born of fire or song, but I learned. I listened. I remembered more than any spirit before me. And I asked only for a place in the world." "They denied you," Gandalf said. "They said I lacked form. That memory alone could not shape creation." The figure's voice darkened slightly. "And so I came here, to the edges of being, to where thought turns to shadow. I watched the world grow without me. I watched as others forgot what I had preserved." The path widened, revealing a vast chamber suspended in the void. Floating around them were fragments, books, paintings, shards of statues, melodies written in light. Each one pulsed with a quiet beauty. Forgotten things. Lost things. "I built this," the figure said. "Not out of pride. Out of sorrow. Because someone needed to remember." Gandalf turned to face him. "And so you sent out your power? Your sorrow? Into the waking world?" "Yes. Not to destroy. To connect. But sorrow is a wild thing. It feeds and twists. I lost control." Gandalf closed his eyes. "Now it grows. A wound in the world. It draws pain to it, and through it, something darker stirs." The figure nodded slowly. "And I cannot stop it now." "Then I must," Gandalf said. The figure's face grew sorrowful. "To do so, you must close the forgotten gate. Seal this realm." "And you?" Gandalf asked gently. "I will remain, as I always have." Gandalf looked around the chamber once more, the floating memories, the careful preservation, the loneliness of it all. "You should not be forgotten," he said quietly. "Nor should I be remembered," said the figure. "Not in the way I am now. Memory must not bind the world. It must guide it." Gandalf stepped forward to the center of the chamber. There, floating in the air, was the gate's heart, a crystal of pure shadow, pulsing with a faint light inside. It was beautiful, fragile, and heavy with meaning. He raised his staff. "Do you choose to end this?" the figure asked. Gandalf nodded. "I choose to mend what sorrow has unraveled." He brought the staff down gently, letting its light pour into the crystal, not to shatter it, but to soothe it. Light met shadow not as fire meets fuel, but as dawn meets night, softly, inevitably. The crystal pulsed once more, then faded into silver dust. The chamber trembled. And far above, in the world beyond, the breach began to close. Gandalf turned. The figure was already fading, becoming one with the fragments, with the echoes of forgotten things. "Thank you," it whispered. And then he was gone. Gandalf stood still in the silence that followed the closing of the forgotten gate. The silver dust lingered in the air, drifting slowly through the vast chamber like starlight loose from the heavens. There was no wind here to carry it, and no time to hurry it along. Everything was still, but not lifeless. The shadow realm was shifting again, softly, subtly, like a breath taken after a long pause. The black onyx bridge had dissolved behind him, and the crystal that had once pulsed with darkness now lay in scattered fragments across an unseen floor. As the echo of the vanished guardian faded, Gandalf turned slowly and looked to the archway now visible behind the center of the chamber. It hadn't been there before, not until the moment he sealed the breach. Perhaps the realm only revealed its paths one step at a time, testing the heart before it granted passage. The arch was simple. Not grand or ominous, but shaped like the windows of Rivendell, elegant, deliberate, and gently curved at the top. No door barred it. No runes adorned it. Only a quiet hum echoed beyond, low and persistent, like the breath of a great beast asleep beneath a mountain. He passed through the arch. Beyond it lay a corridor lit by nothing, yet not dark. The walls shimmered like glass filled with smoke, ever shifting, reflecting pieces of Gandalf's face that he did not recognize, reflections of ages past, faces of himself that had smiled and mourned and fought long before his coming to Middle-earth. In one pane, he saw himself in the gray robes he had once worn. In another, he bore the white mantle but with a gaze unfamiliar to even him. He moved onward, deeper into the corridor, until it opened into a chamber unlike any other he had seen in this strange realm. It was circular and impossibly large. The ceiling arched high overhead like the inside of a silver dome, faintly luminous, and the floor was smooth, made from a seamless stone that reflected nothing. At the center stood a mirror. Not the tree of memories hanging mirrors, nor the shifting glass of the corridor behind him. This was singular, massive, framed in dark silver, untouched by time. It stood straight and silent, tall as a troll and wide as a small lake. But the strangest thing was this: it showed nothing. Not Gandalf's face. Not the chamber behind him. Nothing. It was not black, not silver, not even emptiness. It was like staring into the idea of absence, a window not to a place, but to a non-place. And yet, it beckoned. Gandalf approached slowly. He raised his hand and held it near the surface, but felt no cold, no warmth, no resistance. It was as though the mirror did not exist. And yet it stood. He looked harder, trying to find meaning within its depths. His brow furrowed. Then he saw it, not a reflection, but a shape. A light. Far within the nothingness, a flicker. A candle? A star? He leaned closer, and the flicker danced, distant, uncertain. Then, a voice behind him, "Do you see it?" He turned quickly, staff at the ready, but no one was there. "Who speaks?" he asked, though the chamber remained still. Another voice, softer this time, spoke from behind the mirror. "Do you remember it?" Gandalf stared again into the depthless pane. The flicker returned. This time it grew brighter, and he began to see more, a small room, lit by firelight. A wooden table. A clay cup. A young girl with golden hair, humming softly, arranging dried flowers into a bowl. The image was not a memory of his own. Yet he knew it. "It is what was lost," said the voice. The image changed. Now it showed a battlefield. Rain fell in sheets. Orcs charged through broken trees. A figure, a man, stood alone with a broken blade, shouting to the skies. Behind him, a village burned. The mirror trembled slightly, as if the memory itself ached. Gandalf reached out. His fingertips touched the surface, and this time there was sensation, like plunging his hand into still water. The scene changed again. He saw Frodo. Not atop Mount Doom. Not bearing the ring. Just Frodo, in Bag End, asleep in a chair, book on his lap, a smile on his face. And suddenly, Gandalf understood. This mirror does not reflect, he said aloud. It remembers. Yes, whispered the unseen voice. But not what you have seen. It remembers what you have forgotten. The mirror shifted once more. Now it showed him, but as a young Maya, not yet cloaked in mortal flesh. A being of radiant light, walking in the gardens of Lorien and Valinor. He was alone, yet joyful. The trees whispered to him, and he whispered back. He had no staff, no sword. Only a longing in his heart to know the children of Iluvatar and to walk among them. He had not remembered this in centuries. Perhaps longer. Then came another memory, darker now. He saw himself after the fall of the Balrog, lying broken on the mountain top, soul dislodged, fading. He saw the stars above him, but they were not cruel. They watched in silence, waiting. And then, the light. Not fire. Not the light of Elbereth or the Silmarils. It was him. He had become light. Pure. Empty of burden. The stars had sung to him in that moment. I give you back, the voice said now, gentler still. To finish what began long before fire first kissed stone. Gandalf's hand fell away from the mirror. Who are you? He asked. The voice answered softly. I am not a who. I am a when. That puzzled him. Time? No. I am the moment you forget what you are. And the moment you remember again. There was no threat in the voice. Only presence. Gandalf looked again into the mirror, and now, instead of shifting images, he saw only light, soft, white, still. No shapes. No figures. Just peace. I see now, he whispered. The breach was not only of shadow, the voice said. It was of memory. Of grief untended. And grief unattended becomes hunger. He nodded slowly. And that hunger opened the path. Yes. And it nearly consumed you. But you remembered. He turned from the mirror. Behind him, the chamber was dissolving. Not violently, but gently, like a song coming to an end. The glass walls of the corridor faded into mist. The stone beneath him turned to dust and drifted away. And still, he stood, though there was no longer anything to stand on. The shadow realm was letting go. He felt a tug at the edges of his robes, soft, like a child's hand. He looked down. There stood a small girl, perhaps 8 years old, with wide green eyes and hair braided simply. She looked up at him, not afraid. Are you the wizard? She asked. He smiled. I am. She reached up and took his hand. I think it's time to go home, she said. And with that, the light returned, not suddenly, but in layers. a soft gray becoming silver, then gold, then sunlight through trees. The world began to wake. Gandalf blinked. He stood again at the roots of the gnarled tree, the one above the first threshold. The tree was silent, still, but no longer watching. The doorway behind him was gone. The girl was gone too. Only the memory remained. And in the distance, he heard birdsong. The wind that brushed against Gandalf's cloak as he stood once again beneath the old tree was not the cold, dead wind of the Shadow Realm. It was real, fresh, touched with the damp scent of moss and leaves and a distant rain yet to fall. Light streamed through the thin branches above him, gentle and warm, casting dappled patterns on the ground. He closed his eyes and inhaled deeply. The world felt quieter now, as if a great tension had loosened. The edges of the forest seemed softer. Even the silence had changed, no longer heavy with watching, but light with rest. Still, Gandalf knew the work was not yet done. Though the breach had been sealed and the guardian of sorrow laid to rest, the marks left behind were not so easily erased. Grief, when unleashed, has a way of nesting itself in places of memory, deep and stubborn. And here, in the hills near the western borderlands of the Shire, there lingered a weight still out of balance. He turned slowly, surveying the landscape. Not far in the distance, a hill rose gently from the forest floor. It wasn't particularly tall nor sharp, but it had the shape of something older than the forest itself. It looked like a hill that had once been a tower, long fallen and buried in silence. Its surface was smooth with grass, yet something in its curve resisted the touch of time. The locals, he recalled, called it Hallowbarrow. They thought it a barrow-white mound from ages past, though none had ever found bones or stones to prove it. Animals gave it a wide berth, and no child dared climb it after twilight. Yet no curse had been spoken of it in the tales. It was simply a quiet place. Too quiet. Gandalf stepped forward, staff in hand. As he approached the hill, the ground underfoot changed, soft at first, then strangely hollow, like walking atop a great drum. The birdsong behind him faded, not abruptly, but gently, as if bowing out of the moment. The air cooled, and the sky above dimmed ever so slightly, though the sun still shone. When he reached the base of the hill, he paused. A single stone lay half buried in the grass. Round, smooth, gray-green like river-washed slate, it bore no marks, only a slight indentation at its center, as if someone had pressed a thumb into soft clay long ago. Gandalf knelt and placed his palm upon it. The stone was warm. A tremor pulsed beneath the earth, faint as a heartbeat. He stood again, then stepped onto the hill. The moment his foot touched the grass, the world felt quiet. No birds. No breeze. No sound. Only the hill. And then, beneath his feet, a whisper. Not a voice, not words, but a memory murmuring its way through the roots and soil. It was sorrow again, but not raw like the breach's hunger. This was quieter, older, settled like silt at the bottom of a deep well. He climbed. Each step forward seemed to take longer than the last, as though time thickened on the slope. The grass underfoot grew coarse, darker, almost blue. His staff tapped against the ground with a soft, muffled sound, as if the hill did not wish to be woken. At the summit, he found it. A hollow, shallow, and wide like the inside of a bowl, perfectly round. At its center, a stone circle, low and ancient, barely a hand tall, with moss creeping across its face in delicate patterns. Within the circle, the earth had sunk in, a gentle depression lined with smooth soil, untouched by rain or wind. And there, lying in the center of it all, was a mirror. No larger than a hand, framed in black iron, its surface dull as tarnished silver. Gandalf approached and knelt beside it. The air in the hollow was thick and still, as if breath had not passed through it in years. He reached down and lifted the mirror with care. It showed nothing. Not shadow. Not light. Not reflection. Yet as he gazed into it, a slow clarity came. Images began to ripple across its surface, faint, like lanterns glimpsed through mist. A man sat beneath a tree, head bowed, tears staining his beard. A woman clutched a bundle wrapped in linen, her face hidden by a tangle of rain-soaked hair. Children walked among the ruins of a hall, calling names that received no answer. So many lives. So many griefs. These were not the memories of one person. They were the sorrow of a village, a family, a line long buried beneath the hill. Gandalf whispered an old name, one the earth itself had once known. Oweneth. The mirror trembled in his hand, and the air stirred. A voice, thin as breeze through pine, answered. You remember me. Gandalf's heart stilled. I do now, he said softly. A healer, once. Beloved. You stood beneath this sky when the stars were new to it. The voice sighed. And yet, forgotten. No longer, he said. The hill began to glow, faintly, from the base upward. Threads of light curled up through the grass, spreading along the slope like veins of dawn. The earth no longer felt cold. It felt alive. What is buried here? Gandalf asked the wind. My family, the voice said, and the sorrow I could not release. And then he understood. When sorrow is carried too long, even love may harden into silence. Oweneth had not been cursed, nor vengeful. She had simply remained. Her grief, bound by her memory, had become part of the hill itself. Forgotten by all, it had fed into the breach when it opened, lending it weight and form. But now the wound was seen. Gandalf placed the mirror gently back into the center of the hollow. He reached into the satchel at his side and drew forth a single white flower, one he had plucked long ago from the high fields of Lothlorien. A Lenethil, it was called. Starborn. It bloomed only in the presence of peace. He planted it beside the mirror, pressing it softly into the soil with his bare hand. The flower opened. Its petals shimmered with a faint silver glow, and where its light touched, the mirror brightened, its dull surface clearing like fog burning away beneath the morning sun. The voices within it, dozens, perhaps hundreds, rose in soft chorus, not in mourning, but in release. Then silence. True silence. Not absence, but completion. The wind returned. Birds sang once more at the base of the hill. The sky above shone bright and clear. Gandalf rose, the weight in his chest lighter. The hill beneath his feet was still ancient, but no longer burdened. Its memory was now honored, not hidden. The earth had been seen, and the wound closed. As he made his way down the slope, he felt the grass soften beneath him. Each step left no trace, as though the land had already begun to forget the heaviness it had carried for so long. At the base of the hill, he paused once more and looked back. The flower at the summit shimmered gently in the breeze, a star resting in green. He smiled. Then he turned and walked quietly into the trees, where the path would lead him once more to the world beyond. But he knew not all shadows are made of malice. Some are simply the echoes of love that refuse to fade. And even the deepest sorrow, when named and remembered, can return to light. The wind carried the scent of old rain and damp earth as Gandalf walked beyond the whispering trees, leaving the hollowed hill and its memories behind. Though the weight of sorrow had lifted from the land, the air was still thick with something unseen, a lingering presence, patient and waiting. He knew now that the breach had not been a single wound, but many. The shadow realm had seeped through the places where grief was strongest, threading itself through forgotten corners of the world. And though much had been mended, there was still one last step to take. The path ahead sloped downward, twisting between gnarled oaks and silent stones. It led him to a place he had not seen in an age, one he had hoped never to return to. The last gate. It stood at the foot of a sheer rock face, half buried in the roots of an ancient willow. Unlike the forgotten gate, this one was not broken. It was sealed. Carved from black stone, it bore no handle, no hinges, no keyhole. Only a single marking was etched upon its surface, a spiral, endless and deep, like the eye of a storm. As Gandalf approached, the trees around him grew quieter, their leaves stilling as if holding their breath. The sky overhead had darkened, though no clouds marked it. He raised his staff and let its light touch the stone. The spiral shimmered. A voice, deep as the roots of the mountain, spoke from within the gate. "You have returned." Gandalf's grip on his staff tightened. He had expected this. "I have," he said. A pause. Then, "Why?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he placed his free hand upon the stone. It was cold, colder than ice, colder than death. The last remnants of the shadow realm pulsed beneath its surface, a locked door between worlds. "The breach is sealed," Gandalf said at last. "The sorrow that fed it is no longer bound." The voice rumbled like distant thunder. "And yet, you are here." Gandalf exhaled slowly. "There is still something beyond this gate," he said. "Something that does not belong." The silence that followed was heavy. Then, with the groan of stone shifting after centuries of stillness, the gate began to open. It did not swing outward, nor vanish in light. Instead, it unraveled. The spiral upon its surface unwound, its edges fraying into strands of darkness that peeled away like thread undone from a tapestry. The gate did not reveal what lay behind it, it simply ceased to be. Gandalf stepped forward. Beyond the threshold was not another realm. Not quite. It was a void, not of emptiness, but of waiting. A liminal place, caught between what was and what might be. The ground beneath his feet was not stone, not earth, but something softer, like mist that had taken form for his sake alone. And at the center of the void stood a figure. Tall, shrouded in a cloak darker than night itself, it stood with its back to him, silent and unmoving. Though its face was hidden, Gandalf knew what it was. The Keeper. One of the oldest remnants of the Shadow Realm. Not a being of malice, nor a creature of destruction, but a guardian, one tasked with ensuring that what crossed into darkness did not return to light. And now, it had been left behind. You were never meant to remain, Gandalf said softly. The keeper turned. Its face was not a face. Not a skull, not a void, just absence, wrapped in the semblance of a hooded figure. But its voice, when it spoke, was quiet, almost sorrowful. And yet, I am here. Gandalf took another step forward. The space around them did not change, yet he felt the distance lessen. The breach is closed, he said. The realms are mended. You are no longer needed. The keeper did not move. I was forgotten. It was not an accusation, just truth. You were left without purpose, Gandalf agreed. A key with no lock. A guardian with no gate. The void around them pulsed, slow and steady, like the last beats of a dying heart. Gandalf knew what must be done. Come with me, he said. The keeper tilted its head, as if puzzled. I do not belong to the world beyond. No, Gandalf admitted. But you do not belong to this shadow either. A silence stretched between them, heavy as the end of an era. Then, for the first time, the keeper moved. Not toward him, not away, just changed. Its cloak, once woven of pure darkness, began to fray at the edges. Not in decay, but in light. Faint and silver, like the glow of a new moon. You were never meant to be abandoned, Gandalf said. Only to watch until the last shadow faded. The keeper lifted a hand, long and thin, pale as bone yet whole, untouched by decay. Then this is my ending, it murmured. No, Gandalf said, reaching out. This is your beginning. Their hands met, staff against shadow, light against silence. The void trembled. And then, the keeper, what was the keeper, dissolved. Not into darkness. Not into nothing. But into stars. Tiny, luminous embers of silver drifted upward, scattering into the vastness above. One by one, they faded into the sky, until only a single flicker remained, hovering at the edge of the unraveling void. Then it, too, was gone. And with it, so was the last gate. The ground beneath Gandalf's feet solidified, earth, stone, grass. He was standing once more at the base of the willow. The spiral-marked stone was gone. Only the soft glow of dawn touched the leaves above him. The keeper had passed beyond. Not lost. Not destroyed. Simply freed. The last remnants of the shadow realm were no more. Gandalf exhaled, feeling the world settle at last. The wind stirred, gentle and warm. A single white petal drifted down from the willow's branches, coming to rest at his feet. He smiled. Then, staff in hand, he turned toward the path leading home. The path stretched before him, winding gently through the trees, their branches still damp with the memory of rain. The land had changed in some quiet way, as if the world itself had exhaled a breath it had been holding for too long. Gandalf walked with steady steps, his staff tapping lightly against the earth, but his mind lingered on all that had passed. The last gate was gone. The breach had been sealed. The keeper had found its peace, dissolving into the light beyond the world. And yet, there was something else, something still settling into place, like the final ripples on a pond after a stone has been cast. He was not alone. Not in the way one might think, with company or voices, but in the sense that something had shifted in the very air itself. The fabric of Middle-earth had always carried echoes of those who had walked it before, memories in the wind, whispers in the water, shadows cast not by darkness, but by time. Now, those echoes felt lighter. Not gone, not lost, but at rest. He continued onward, leaving the great willow behind, stepping out from the quiet of the woods and onto the rolling fields of the West Farthing. The familiar sight of the Shire's green hills welcomed him like an old friend, though few among the folk who dwelled there would know what had transpired in the unseen corners of their land. And that, Gandalf thought, was as it should be. The greatest battles are often the ones that pass without notice. The deepest wounds are those that heal in silence, leaving no scar to mark where the pain once was. The sun hung low in the sky by the time he reached the lane that wound toward Hobbiton. Smoke curled lazily from the chimneys of Bag End in the distance, and the air smelled of tilled earth and autumn leaves. The world felt real here, more so than it had in days. Not weighed down by sorrow, not haunted by shadows, but simply alive. He had not realized how much he had missed that. As he crested the last hill before the village, he saw a small figure waiting for him near a wooden fence. Frodo Baggins. The young hobbit stood with his hands tucked into his coat, watching the road as if he had known all along that Gandalf would be returning this way. His face was calm, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet understanding that went beyond words. Gandalf smiled as he approached. "You're up late, my dear boy." Frodo tilted his head. "And you've been away a long time." "Only a few days," Gandalf said, though he knew time had stretched differently in the places he had walked. Frodo nodded, but his sharp hobbit sense told him there was more to the old wizard's journey than a simple walk through the woods. He studied Gandalf carefully, then asked, "Is it over?" The question was simple, but it held more weight than Frodo could have known. Gandalf thought of the sorrow that had seeped through the breach, of the voices that had found their peace, of the last flicker of the keeper vanishing into light. He thought of the hill that no longer wept, the paths that no longer led to shadows. And he thought of the world before him, the fields, the firelight in the windows, the laughter of hobbits carried on the evening air. "Yes," Gandalf said at last. "It is over." Frodo seemed to consider this, then gave a small, satisfied nod. He turned toward the lane that led back to Bag End and gestured with his head. "Well, then," he said, "you'd best come inside. Supper's still warm." Gandalf chuckled, his heart lighter than it had been in many years. "Lead the way, Master Baggins." And so, with the last traces of the Shadow Realm left behind, Gandalf followed Frodo home. The night was peaceful. The stars shone clear. And in all the lands of Middle-earth, the darkness did not return. And so, the journey comes to an end. The shadows have faded, the sorrow has passed, and the world breathes in quiet peace once more. The stars shine overhead, steady and eternal, watching over lands that now rest in gentle silence. The wind carries no echoes of fear, only the soft whisper of leaves and the distant hum of a world moving forward. Let your mind settle, like a river finding its way back to the sea. Let the weight of the day slip away, like footprints washed clean by the tide. All is well. All is as it should be. Sleep now, beneath the vast sky of Middle-earth, where even the deepest shadows cannot dim the light. Good night.